Aquarius, there is a pattern in your life that has shown up before, and if you are paying close attention right now, you are starting to recognize it again. It does not always look exactly the same on the outside. The names change, the places change, sometimes even the type of situation changes. But the feeling underneath it, that mixture of excitement and uncertainty, that sense of standing at a crossroads you have stood at before, that is familiar. And what is interesting about Aquarius is that you are one of the few signs that can actually recognize a repeating pattern while you are inside it. You have the intellectual clarity to see the cycle even as it is unfolding around you. The question is not whether you see it. The question is whether, this time, you are going to choose to handle it differently. Whether you are going to use what you have already learned from the last time this energy came through your life. Because this is not happening to you. It is happening for you. And the fact that you are here, listening to this right now, suggests that on some level you already know that. Something in you is ready to look at this honestly, to stop pretending the pattern does not exist, and to decide with full awareness what comes next. Stay with this message, Aquarius. All 11 signs we are about to walk through are going to feel very close to home. Sign 1. The same kind of person keeps appearing in your life. You have been here before. A person enters your world, and something about them feels immediately magnetic. They are interesting, independent, different from the crowd. They seem to see things the way you see them. Conversations flow easily. There is an energy between you that feels like possibility. And then, somewhere down the line, the same friction appears. The same patterns of distance and intensity. The same push and pull that you recognize from a connection you thought was finished long ago. Aquarius, when the same kind of person keeps showing up in your life, it is rarely coincidence. The faces and names are different, but if the dynamic has a familiar shape, that is your signal. The universe tends to repeat a lesson until it has been fully learned, and it does so not to punish you but because the growth available inside that particular dynamic has not yet been completed. There is something in the way you engage with this kind of person, something in the patterns of connection and withdrawal, something in where you draw your lines and how you manage your heart, that still has something to teach you. For Aquarius specifically, the repeating pattern in relationships often has to do with the tension between closeness and freedom. You need deep intellectual connection, but you also need significant personal space. When someone gets too close too quickly, you tend to pull back. When they keep their distance, you may find yourself drawn forward. This dance is not unique to you, but you experience it with unusual intensity because independence is so fundamental to who you are. The person who keeps reappearing in different forms is not necessarily someone you should avoid. They may be someone who holds a mirror up to a part of yourself that you have not yet fully examined. The recurring relationship pattern is asking you to look more carefully at what you want, what you are afraid of, and what version of connection you are actually prepared to allow. When you genuinely answer those questions, the pattern tends to change. Not because different people show up, but because you show up differently. Sign 2. You keep reaching the same wall in your work or career. There is a specific frustration that Aquarius knows well in the professional world, and it is this: you can see clearly what could be done differently, what could be improved, what innovation could look like if anyone was willing to try it, but the environment around you is not ready for that vision. And so you run into a wall. You push your ideas forward, they get dismissed or diluted or simply ignored, and eventually you find yourself in the same position you were in before. Brilliant, underutilized, and wondering whether to stay or go. If this feels familiar right now, if you are at a point in your work where you have hit what feels like the same ceiling you hit the last time, or the time before that, that is the sign. It is not that your ideas are wrong. It is not that the work is meaningless. What is repeating is the dynamic between your level of vision and the level of the environment you are operating in. Aquarius consistently finds themselves in environments that are not quite big enough for the scale of what they are thinking. The lesson hidden inside this repeating wall is not to stop thinking so expansively. The lesson is about the relationship between your vision and the structure you choose to operate within. Are you seeking out environments that genuinely support innovation? Or are you landing in conventional structures and then feeling surprised when they push back against unconventional ideas? Are you building the kind of credibility and trust that allows your boldest thinking to land with authority? Or are you presenting big visions before the foundations of relationship and track record are in place? The wall is not the enemy. The wall is the teacher. And it is showing up again because there is still something in how you navigate professional environments and professional relationships that has room to grow. When you figure out how to build the bridge between your vision and the context you are operating in, the wall disappears. Not because the world has changed, but because you have found a smarter way through it. If what you are hearing feels accurate, know that it could happen if you applied this energy consistently for 21 consecutive days. That is the 21-day challenge pinned at the top of this channel. It is built around daily guidance, focused direction, and real momentum. If you are tired of staying in the same cycle, that structure is exactly what has been missing. Sign 3. Your emotional detachment has started costing you things you actually value. Aquarius is known for emotional distance. You process the world primarily through thought, and while you feel deeply, you often do not express those feelings in ways that others can easily read. You tend to maintain a certain coolness, a certain composure, a certain remove from the messiness of emotional experience. And for much of your life, this quality has served you. It has allowed you to think clearly in situations where others become overwhelmed. It has protected you from being pulled into dynamics that would compromise your independence. But there is a pattern that can develop for Aquarius when this emotional detachment becomes a default mode rather than a conscious choice. And that pattern looks like this: you keep losing things you actually wanted. A relationship fades because the other person could not tell that you cared. A friendship slowly ends because you never quite let the person in enough for them to feel the connection. An opportunity passes because you never let yourself want it openly enough to pursue it with full energy. You are left standing outside of your own life, looking at things you valued, watching them move away, not quite sure how it happened. If this pattern is showing up again right now, whether in a relationship, a friendship, a creative project, or a dream that has been sitting quietly in your chest for years, this is your signal to look at it honestly. Your detachment is a protection, but at some point protection becomes a cage. The things that matter to you do not get less meaningful just because you feel them quietly. They deserve to be treated as if they matter, which means showing up for them, expressing them, moving toward them with some visible warmth and commitment. The good news is that this pattern, once you see it clearly, is entirely within your power to change. You do not have to become someone who is ruled by emotion. You do not have to become demonstrative or performative, but you can begin to let the people and things that actually matter to you know in your own way that they matter. That small shift can change everything. Sign 4. You keep starting over in the same area of life. Whether it is a creative pursuit, a living situation, a relationship structure, or a professional direction, Aquarius sometimes finds themselves in a loop of beginning and abandoning, starting fresh and then eventually letting something go, only to begin something very similar a year or two later. The new beginning feels different each time. The energy is fresh, the hope is real, and you genuinely believe that this time it will look different. And for a while it does, until it starts to feel the same again. This starting over pattern is one of the most important ones for Aquarius to examine honestly. Because the truth is, Aquarius loves beginnings. You love the electricity of a new idea, a new connection, a new environment. You love the feeling of possibility before the ordinary constraints of commitment and continuity begin to press in. And there is nothing inherently wrong with that love for the new. Your sign is wired for innovation, for change, for what is next. But if you keep starting over in the same area of life and never quite building past a certain point, the pattern is telling you something. It may be telling you that your relationship with continuity needs attention, that there is something happening around the middle of each new beginning, when the novelty wears off and the real work of sustained commitment begins, that you find a reason to disengage. A reason that is usually intellectual and usually very compelling, but it is covering something underneath. What is underneath is almost always a fear. A fear that if you stay long enough, you will be seen. That if you go deep enough, you will be required to be vulnerable. That if you commit fully, you will eventually lose the freedom to change direction. Understanding what your specific version of that fear is, and deciding consciously whether you want to keep letting it run the show, is the work that breaks this particular cycle. Sign 5. The people who truly see you are not the ones you keep reaching for. Aquarius attracts all kinds of people. You are fascinating to others in a way you may not always fully appreciate. Your mind, your uniqueness, your combination of intellectual depth and emotional self-containment, these qualities draw people in. But there is a pattern that some Aquarians fall into, which is directing the most energy toward people who do not quite see them, who require constant explanation and justification, who challenge the Aquarius to prove their worth in subtle or not so subtle ways, while almost unconsciously overlooking the people who are simply, quietly, genuinely present. If this pattern is showing up in your life right now, It is worth stopping to examine why the connection that requires you to earn it feels more compelling than the connection that gives freely. This is a pattern that goes deep, often back to early experiences of love and approval that were conditional, that required performance or perfection or sacrifice. And Aquarius, with its natural need to be understood in its individuality, can be particularly sensitive to early experiences of being misread or dismissed. The work here is not to force yourself toward people who do not excite you. It is to question why the ones who recognize your value without requiring constant demonstration of it feel somehow less interesting, less important, less worth the investment. That questioning is uncomfortable, but it leads somewhere important. It leads to a version of your relationships that is based on genuine recognition, rather than the ongoing effort to be known. You deserve to be seen clearly, Aquarius. And the people who already see you clearly deserve to be seen back. If this message is resonating with your sign right now, trust that it is not a coincidence. When the universe wants to speak to you, it sends exactly the right signal at exactly the right moment. And you are here because you needed to hear this today. Your support, whether as a subscriber or as a member of this community, is what keeps these messages alive. The ones that touch hearts, awaken minds, and transform lives. If this video has been making sense to you, drop in the comments the day you were born. Let us keep going. Sign 6. Your biggest ideas keep staying only in your head. This is a pattern that Aquarius lives with more often than it likes to admit. The ideas are extraordinary. They come with clarity and completeness, full visions of things that could exist, solutions to problems that others have not even identified yet, creative works or social innovations or personal projects that would genuinely make a difference if they existed in the world. And yet they remain inside, circling in the mind, sometimes for years, occasionally shared in conversation, where they are met with enthusiasm or confusion, and then set aside again, never quite translated into the action and the sustained effort that would bring them into reality. If you recognize this pattern, you are not alone. It is one of the most common Aquarian struggles. The gap between the vision and the manifestation is often wide for your sign, not because you lack the ability to execute, but because the act of bringing a bold idea into ordinary reality requires a kind of sustained, methodical, often unglamorous effort that does not match the electrical energy with which the idea originally arrived. The idea felt whole and complete when it came to you. The execution requires patience, collaboration, repetition, and a tolerance for imperfection. Those are not your favorite conditions. But here is what this recurring pattern is asking you to consider. What if the ideas themselves are not the gift? What if the gift is what gets built when you take one of those ideas all the way through, past the excitement of inception, past the friction of the middle, past the tedium of completion, all the way to the point where it exists in the world and can actually do the thing it was always meant to do? The pattern of brilliant ideas staying only in your head is not a character flaw. It is an invitation to develop the one quality that, combined with your vision, would make you truly unstoppable: the willingness to finish. Sign 7. You seek freedom but keep recreating situations that restrict you. Aquarius values freedom more than almost any other sign. It is not just a preference. It is a core need, something close to the foundation of your identity. And yet, if you look at your life with real honesty, you may notice something paradoxical. The situations you keep finding yourself in often involve restriction. A job with a demanding structure that leaves little room for autonomous decision-making. A relationship with dynamics that feel more controlling than you signed up for. A financial situation that limits your ability to make the choices you want to make. A home environment or social obligation that takes up more of your time and energy than you intended to give. You did not plan for restriction. You never do. But somehow it keeps appearing, and it keeps appearing in the same forms. That is the pattern. And the signal inside that pattern is not that the world is conspiring to take away your freedom. The signal is that there is something in how you set up your life and your commitments that creates the conditions for restriction, even when you are consciously seeking the opposite. For some Aquarians, this happens because they say yes to things they should say no to out of idealism, out of a desire to contribute, out of a belief that they can make something work even when the signs say otherwise. For others, it happens because they avoid the deliberate construction of freedom, the financial planning, the clear communication of boundaries, the careful selection of environments, as if building freedom is somehow too conventional or too controlling to fit with their unconventional identity. True freedom is not accidental. It is not something that simply exists when restrictions are removed. It is something that is actively built through consistent, conscious choices. The recurring restriction in your life is inviting you to become more intentional about designing the conditions that actually support the freedom you need. Sign 8. You have had the same realization about yourself multiple times. Aquarius is a highly self-aware sign. You think deeply about your own patterns, your own psychology, your own tendencies and blind spots. And there are moments of genuine clarity, moments when you see yourself very precisely, when you understand exactly what you have been doing and why, when the pattern suddenly becomes transparent and the lesson becomes obvious. And in those moments, you feel certain that things will be different from here on out. But then somewhere down the road, you find yourself in the same place again, having the same realization, seeing the same pattern, understanding again why you did what you did. The insight returns with a familiar quality, as if you have visited this particular corner of your own mind before. This is one of the most honest signs that a pattern has not yet been fully integrated. Aquarius tends to process change on the level of understanding before processing it on the level of behavior. You can understand something very clearly and still act from the old pattern, not out of foolishness or weakness, but because understanding and transformation are two different things. Understanding is the first step. Transformation requires the understanding to travel from the mind down into the body and the habits, into the actual moment-by-moment choices that make up your daily life. If you are having the same realization again right now, the work this time is not to understand it more deeply. You already understand it. The work is to close the gap between what you know and how you live. That is a slower, more patient kind of work than the work of insight. But it is the work that actually changes things. Sign 9. A specific fear keeps surfacing in different disguises. Aquarius is not someone who likes to admit to fear. You believe in reason, in independence, in the power of the individual to navigate their own path without being controlled by anxiety or limitation. And yet, just like everyone else, you carry fears. The difference is that Aquarius's fears tend to be intellectual in their expression. They do not always show up as straightforward anxiety. They show up as arguments, as the decision to be cautious, as the carefully reasoned explanation for why now is not the right time, as the preference for analysis over action, as the strategic withdrawal that feels like wisdom but is actually avoidance. The specific fear varies from person to person. For some Aquarians, it is the fear of being truly known and then rejected. For others, it is the fear of commitment and the loss of independence it implies. For others still, it is the fear of failure in a public or visible way. But whatever your specific version is, it has a pattern. It surfaces in similar situations. It wears different disguises, but underneath those disguises it has the same feeling, the same pull away from something that simultaneously draws you forward. The sign that this pattern is repeating is when you find yourself, again, in the same internal place. Standing at the edge of something you want, talking yourself out of taking the step. The fear itself is not the problem. The pattern is the instruction. The instruction is to stop letting the fear decide. To make the choice yourself consciously even while the fear is present. That is courage. And it is the one thing that breaks the cycle more reliably than anything else. Sign 10. You are once again standing at a fork in the road. There is a particular quality of awareness that Aquarius has when they are standing at a genuine choice point in their life. It is a combination of clarity and weight, a sense that the decision in front of them actually matters, that the path taken here will shape what comes next in ways that are difficult to undo. You have stood here before. The specifics were different, but the feeling is the same. And you remember perhaps what you chose last time. Whether that choice led where you hoped it would. Whether there is anything you would do differently now. If you are at that fork again, if you can feel the weight of a genuine decision pressing against your life right now, that is not a burden. That is an invitation. The universe does not put you at a real choice point unless both paths have something significant to offer, and unless you have grown enough from the last time to be capable of choosing with greater wisdom. What made the last version of this decision hard may be less hard now. What you could not see clearly before may be visible to you now. The growth you have done, the patterns you have examined, the things you have let go of, and the things you have decided to hold on to, all of that is information that you get to bring to this fork in the road. You are not the same Aquarius who stood here before. You have more. Use it. Sign 11. Something is asking you to finally trust yourself completely. The 11th and final sign is the one that sits underneath all the others, the one that gives the pattern its deepest meaning. And it is this: you keep coming back to the same moments, the same crossroads, the same patterns, not because you are failing, but because you have not yet fully claimed the one thing that would transform all of it. And that thing is complete, unconditional trust in yourself. Aquarius has extraordinary instincts. Your vision is sharper than you give yourself credit for. Your understanding of people and systems and possibilities is genuinely ahead of the curve. You see things before they happen. You feel the shape of what is right before you can justify it with evidence. And yet, again and again, you override those instincts. You second-guess the knowing. You wait for more information, more certainty, more external validation before you allow yourself to act on what you already know. The pattern keeps repeating because the lesson at the center of it is always the same. Trust yourself. Not blindly, not recklessly, but with the confidence of someone who has enough of a track record now to know that when you follow your genuine knowing, when you act from your authentic vision rather than from fear or from the desire to conform or from the need for approval, things tend to work out in ways that, in hindsight, feel inevitable. This time, Aquarius, the invitation is to not ignore the pattern, to see it clearly, to name it honestly, and to decide with full awareness that you are going to respond to it differently. Not because someone told you to, but because you know it is time. If this message resonated with your sign, trust that it is not a coincidence. When the universe wants to speak to you, it always sends exactly the right signal. And you are here because you needed to hear this today. Your support as a subscriber or as a member of this community is what keeps these messages alive. They are the messages that touch, awaken, and transform. If this video made sense to you, leave in the comments the day you were born. Aquarius, the reason we do not ignore patterns is not that they predict doom or that they lock us in. We pay attention to patterns because they are the most honest feedback we will ever receive about where we still have work to do. They are the places where our history and our future meet, where the lessons we have not yet completed show up again to offer us another chance. And if you are the kind of person who is watching a video like this, who is genuinely willing to look at your own patterns honestly, then you already have the most important quality the work requires. You have the willingness to see everything we have walked through today: the repeating relationship dynamic, the professional wall, the emotional detachment, the starting over, the missed connection, the ideas that stay in your head, the freedom that keeps slipping away, the realization that keeps returning, the fear in disguise, the fork in the road, and the deep invitation to trust yourself. All of these are connected. They are different faces of the same fundamental invitation. The invitation is growth. Real, honest, uncomfortable, transformative growth. The kind that does not just happen in your mind but shows up in your choices, your relationships, your daily life, and the way you move through the world. The kind that other people notice not because you have announced it but because something about how you carry yourself has changed. You have been around this particular mountain before. You know its shape. You know what the challenging parts look like, and you know what it feels like when you get to the top and can finally see the view. The question this time is not whether you can make the climb. You already know you can. The question is whether you are ready to stop taking the same detour that has been adding extra time to the journey. We think you are ready. More than that, we think some part of you already knows you are ready. The fact that you recognized yourself in these signs, the fact that you sat with this message all the way through, the fact that you are still here right now, that is the answer. Not someday, Aquarius. Now, the pattern you have been ignoring is asking for your attention. The growth waiting on the other side of it is asking for your courage. And the version of yourself that finally breaks the cycle is asking for your trust. Give all three of those things freely and watch how quickly everything begins to change.